All right, so I think we've kind of evened out in our presentation here. So thank you to everyone who's in attendance today. For those of you who have just come in, my name is Don Ames. I'm the manager of admissions and recruitment for the GDIP ICL program. So this is a webinar that is geared specifically towards our winter 2023 applications and our applicants. So for anybody who has applied for fall 2022 or who is interested in applying for fall 2022, we're not going to have any information in regards to the fall cohort. That application has been closed since I believe it was April 1st. And we've already begun kind of processing all of those applications. There's nothing further we can provide to fall 2022 individuals. If anybody's interested in a fall cohort, though, of course, we do reopen our application for the fall 2023 intake as of October 1st. So this information is going to assist you, but we will have more specific fall 2023 webinars closer to the time that we reopen that application. So just be mindful there. All right. So before we begin any of our webinars, we always like to produce an acknowledgement of territory. It is a really great element that all institutions do across campus. And we just want to make sure that we acknowledge the unceded territory in which Queen's University sits. So Queen's University does sit on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. There are an amazing group of individuals on campus who do fantastic work on identity and inclusivity, indigeneity, and we are really fortunate to work on these lands, to work at Queen's, but to always acknowledge atrocities that took place to the Indigenous peoples of Canada, and just continue to work on reconciliation, understanding, and trying to get ourselves to a better place. And Queen's is doing some great work, and it's why we always do this acknowledgement of territory. We want to make sure that we always acknowledge and we always remember, and we don't let it just pass us by when it comes to our events. So there's lots of great resources you can access via Queen's. If you want to learn more, I highly encourage people to look at the Four Directions Indigenous Student Center, as well as the Office of Indigenous Initiatives. There's some really great people doing work there. So we want to thank the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people for everything that they've provided, and we just always want to acknowledge the territory on which Queen's sits. So here's our agenda for today. So I'm going to go through a bit of an overview of the GDIP ICL, as I always do. I want to make sure people understand the program itself. I've actually added a little bit. If you've viewed any of our previous recordings, there's a little bit more information that I'm providing here in this session in regards to the actual in-class work when it comes to the GDIP ICL. Then I'm going to go over the winter 2023 application specifically. And then, of course, we're getting into our frequently asked questions, and then we're going to get into our Q&A. Now, when it comes to the Q&A portion, we do have a Q&A box available for people to utilize today. However, I do encourage you to wait on using that until we get to the Q&A section. A lot of the items that I talk about in my presentation probably will cover some of the answers that you're seeking. So if you have anything additional, that's when you utilize the Q&A box, and I'm asking people to hold on to that until we're about halfway through the presentation. One of the things I want to note, however, is that you can open up the Q&A box and you can monitor the other questions that are coming in, and you can upvote specific questions that you want answered. It's the way that you identify with us which questions are most important. And I can actually come back and directly address those questions verbally here in the session. So you don't necessarily just have to ask your own questions. You can upvote other people's questions, which will be really helpful. I already see that somebody's populated the Q&A. I'm asking people to hold off on that for now. Additionally, there's no need to raise your hand in this session unless you're just saying hi to us, which is greatly appreciated. We're not going to ask you to unmute at this point. So just take the time to take in the materials of this presentation and utilize the Q&A box at a later point. Don't use it right now. So I appreciate the two questions that are in there. Lots of people are really eager to learn about our program, but there's nothing more that we can add in that point. The presentation will hopefully address a lot of those materials. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the review of the GDIP ICL. So we call it the GDIP ICL. It's our short form for the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law. There's lots of great things to highlight with our program, and we're extremely popular. We have an overwhelming amount of communications that we receive to our general inbox every single day. So we do see a real interest in this program, and from a wide variety of individuals, both those who are interested in utilizing this as a pathway to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and for those who are interested in utilizing this in their own private endeavors. Or if they just want to take it into different professions. There's lots of reasons why this program really works and is a great focus for anybody who's interested in the RCIC program or just taking it into government or private industry. There's lots of great things to utilize our learning for. Some of the key highlights that we always highlight in these presentations, our program is delivered entirely online. That was always the intention for this program. We really wanted to develop an online presence for this program, and all of our courses, all 9 of them, are delivered entirely online. There's no need for an individual to transfer to Kingston, Ontario, or to Canada itself if you're international. We're happy to welcome all students, no matter what your status is with Canada. And we really do provide a really immersive online experience through a lot of different platforms that we utilize. So it's a really great community that's established when it comes to our online focus. We've been doing this now for, I believe, 4 full cohorts. So we've started to really iron out the wrinkles and really make it work for us. And I think we have an extremely vibrant method of really getting people to interact with one another and to really feel a part of the Queen's community. We have a great student body as is. We have a huge number of individuals who are still currently in the program who will be there to support you moving forward. That can be great resources. They always seem to be developing ways of communicating with one another. So there's lots of great information there. As well as we have an alumni network now. We have alumni who have graduated from our program, and we're trying to introduce ways of bringing in people who have been in your shoes and who have graduated and moved into an industry to bring them into the fold and to provide more information. So that's to be established further, but we're already graduating students and seeing great successes. So it's really fantastic to see this program really doing well. As mentioned, this is the exclusive English language pathway to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant and to become eligible for the entry to practice exam. So for those of you who are interested in becoming regulated Canadian immigration consultants, or RCICs for short, this is the pathway for you. It's the only way that you can become eligible for the entry to practice exam, or EPE for short. And then there's a few additional requirements at the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, their CICC, or the college as we call it, to then become an RCIC. I'll go through those a little bit later in this presentation, but this is the only English pathway. If you are bilingual, if you speak French, there is an additional program through the Université de Montréal. They are kind of our sister program, and they have an online program as well. It's another graduate diploma. They do focus a little bit more on the French component, of course, but also on the Quebec immigration component. So if that is something that you're interested, their program is available as well. But if you're just looking for the English language pathway, you've found it here in the GDIP ICL program. We have 9 courses in total. For a full-time student, you'll complete those 9 courses across 3 terms. For a part-time student, it's a minimum of 24 months, or 6 terms, or basically 2 years. We have world-renowned instructors who are experts in the field. We have a great roster of instructors who provide these courses. People who are regulated Canadian immigration consultants, lawyers, people who have been in the immigration field, government, so many different private industries. Like, it's a really great slate of experts that you're going to be learning from. And we really do have a really engaged group of instructors who are there to support the student throughout every aspect of their journey. And of course, I want to talk about a little bit about the self-directed learning opportunity. So a lot of you may be thinking about how the structure of classes are for our program. There's only one major component that you actually need to be online live for per course, and those are the tutorials. Tutorials are 2 hours once a week. for every week of the program. So for example, for incoming students to winter 2023, so you start up your studies in January, you're going to take ICL 810. It's our foundations course. It's a 6-week program. You'll have 6 tutorials, 1 per week for those 6 weeks. They're 2 hours in length, they're mandatory, but those are the only live components of the program that you need to actually be aware of and like present online for. All the other components of your study are through self-directed learning opportunities. So that's things like your readings, doing online quizzes, online interactions through our platforms, any research projects that you're doing. Those are things that you're establishing on your own. And you basically have to treat this like you're working remotely on a full-time job. There's a significant time commitment to your studies. And that's what I want to outline here. I want to make sure everybody's really clear about just how committed you have to be to the program in order to get yourself really successful and graduating with the grades that you want. Before I do that, though, just want to note we are seeing questions coming into the Q&A box. I appreciate those, but please hold off on those for now. There are going to be there's going to be tons of information in this session that's probably going to answer some of your questions. So please hold off on the Q&A for now and just tune in for the presentation here. So as I mentioned, there's a pretty intensive learning experience when it comes to our program. We are a graduate level program at a very well-established institution here in Canada. It expects a lot of our students, and it's why we really encourage those who are taking this program, either full-time or part-time, to really dedicate themselves to their studies. We don't see a really good possibility of, if you are a full-time employee at a current organization, to be doing this program full-time. So you need to keep that in mind. Plus, for the winter intake, part-time study plans are only reviewed on a very limited basis. There aren't many spots available, or any, depending on the year. So you really need to take that into consideration with your studies. You need to be really focusing on this as if you are doing a full-time career, or even as if you are attending classes in person. You have to dedicate that time if you are having to go to lectures and multiple tutorials or additional sessions. But because this is virtual and a lot of it is run based on your own schedule, you really have to commit yourself to it. And a lot of our students do indicate that it was an overwhelming experience, very rewarding, of course, and it has a great outcome in the end. But of course, we really want to ensure that you know what you're getting into when it comes to our program. It's going to be intense. It's going to be hard, but that's what you expect from graduate level studies at any university across Canada or internationally. So prepare yourself for that as you get into thinking about your application, or if you've applied, if you're thinking about, well, should I get an offer of admission? This is what I should prepare for. So just keep that in mind. So I've already mentioned the time commitment. Of course, one of the things I encourage you is to review self-directed learning. Go and Google that. There's also some great courses available that you can kind of take and experience what self-directed learning is for you. It is not a study plan that is for everybody. So the more research that you do on self-directed learning and the expectations on time management and setting goals and making sure that you're on task with your assignments, with doing what's required of you, it will benefit you in the long run. So just keep that in mind. Also, to reiterate, there's no on-campus component of any element of the GDIP ICL. Everything is done in the online space, including the interactions with the GDIP ICL staff. So while we appreciate that if you have questions, you may want to phone us, or you may want to come to campus even. Those aren't methods that we utilize when it comes to interacting with prospective students, with current applicants, or even our current students. Everything's done in the virtual space. So get used to developing professional email skills when it comes to interacting with the program. If you have any questions for us in regards to your application, the more information you can provide, making sure that you're clear in your questions and you provide your application reference number, or should you become a student, your student number, will really help in the interactions between us in the program, your instructors, your fellow students, and yourself. So really hone those email skills and then get used to working in a virtual space. Those are the real big things that I want to talk about in regards to the commitment of this program. And I think it's really important information to take away from this. Now, of course, here's kind of a good visual in regards to the progress that you'll experience as a prospective applicant or even a current applicant for our program. So maybe you are at this early stage, you've submitted your application for winter 2023, you're just waiting for further information, you're still submitting documents. You're at that far left-hand side of the screen. Even if you haven't thought about applying and you're just kind of testing the waters here, you're over there on the left. And of course, you're progressing from applicant to student, from student to graduate. And then you have this kind of fork in the road to decide what you want to do moving forward. Either your focus is to become eligible to take the college's entry to practice exam, or you want to take this into the private sector or government, whatever works there. That's where you kind of separate off the different options available to you. And again, this program has some really great learning from some fantastic experts. So it's really important to know what you want to do with this, with the education that you're experiencing. It's actually one of the questions that we ask you on the application. And there's kind of your first sort of instance of some support to help your application process. We ask you 2 questions on the application. One, what's motivating you to apply for this program? What is your interest? Why this industry? Why Queens? Why this program? And then the second question is, what are you going to do once you graduate? Are you going to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant? Are you going to take it into private practice? Are you creating your own business? Are you going to go into government? Tell us those things on the application as best as you can, while abiding by the word count. We have a 200 word count for each of the questions. So just be mindful there. The way that I recommend people fill out their application, if you haven't already done so, is to write your submissions, your answers for each of those questions in a Word document. And then you can kind of tailor it and tweak it, and then you can just copy and paste them in at a later point. It's really one of the only opportunities we get to see you outside of the documents that you submit. And it's a great way to kind of tell us more about yourself, why this program is interesting to you, what are you going to do beyond? And it's a great opportunity for us to really get a sense of the applicant. So if you haven't already applied, really dedicate yourself to those questions. If you're thinking about a future application, the same thing applies. For those who are interested in becoming an RCIC, I really encourage you to visit this website. This is the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants website. They have some great outlines in regards to how do you become an RCIC and how do you maintain that designation. There are additional requirements when it comes to what the college requires after you complete our program and write the EPE. So it's good to educate yourself as best as possible by visiting that website. If you've applied for our program and you've submitted your documents, essentially at this point, you're just waiting for word, and that's going to take a few months. We are going to take some time to really go through the applications and get a sense of who our incoming students are going to be. This is the opportunity for you to do some research. Of course, I'm not promoting that until you've submitted all of your documentation. If you have to write an English language proficiency test, if you need to get transcripts submitted, prioritize those first. But when all that's done and you've reviewed your application in the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs system and you see that your items are checked, then go ahead and start doing your additional research. It's always good to help kind of educate yourself by visiting the college website, understanding more about Queens, about the program, visit our program website, and then start looking into all the different options such as self-directed learning and how you best manage your time, your commitments, things along those lines. So let's take a look at the current application. We are down to the wire here when it comes to the winter 2023 application cycle. The application opened on May 1st, and it is going to close in a few days on August 1st. So we really do encourage you to consider your options for applying for winter. Again, as I mentioned, part-time studies, not going to be the best option, a winter application. Fall is going to be your better option there. Additionally, what we've heard a lot from individuals is that they're concerned about the documents that they need to submit. The primary way to submit documents is with your application. It's to take English PDF copies in black and white and upload them with your application, both sides. And I'll get into transcripts here in a little bit. But if you're unable to do that, a lot of people have expressed concern that they're worried that they can't get their documents in time by the August 1st deadline. That's what I'm here to address first. The August 1st deadline is the application deadline. You need to get your application in for consideration for the winter 2023 intake. you still have until September 15th to submit documents. Now, all of your official transcripts and things, they need to be submitted in a specific way, including your English language proficiency test. That's one way of submitting things, is through the directly to the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs office. Resumes, for those who are applying via the access pathway, they send those directly to our program office via email. But for everybody, you have until September 15th. So you still have some wiggle room here when it comes to submitting the documents. If you're really interested in applying for winter, you're a full-time applicant, you're really keen on starting this as quickly as possible, you apply for winter, you can get your application in before the 1st. So just keep that in mind. For those of you who maybe aren't ready to do that, you're here in the session, you want to just kind of learn more about the program in general and about admissions. The next application will actually open on October 1st. So you will have a little bit of time. It's not a huge kind of length of time, August 1st, October 1st. And that will be for fall 2023. And again, we're welcoming in part-time and full-time applicants for that intake. You will have until May 15th to submit documents. So you do have a longer window to get us any transcripts. And that might be really important for our international students or individuals who are citizens or permanent residents in Canada who have international credentials. Maybe you did your undergrad or your master's and MBA somewhere in a country where it's difficult to acquire transcripts. Maybe you need more time. If you think you can gain them or gather them up before September 15th, great. If you can't, consider the fall application, because you will have a lot more time. And there are some specific requirements when it comes to transcripts that I'm going to cover. We've had this question quite a bit as well, is individuals who are applying for winter and they're interested in deferring their application or start date to fall 2023. That's not a possibility for anybody who's applied for winter 2023, or even those who applied for fall 2022. It's a different academic year, and we just can't move applications from winter until up until the next fall. So if you are interested in applying for fall 2023, you will have to apply once the application opens on October 1st. So just keep that in mind. So there are different applications that you can submit up until August 1st, full-time applications, of course. Part-time, I've already talked about how those are only going to be considered on an extremely limited basis, if at all, by our admissions committee. Access pathway, I'll cover a little bit, but those are both for full-time and part-time. But as mentioned with the part-time, already covered it. You also have the option of applying as an interest student, either for program credit or for no program credit. Those first three do come with an application fee. So again, kind of that note at the bottom of the screen, make sure you know what you're applying for. But for the interest students for program credit and no program credit, those are not, they don't come with an application fee. However, they come with a very limited amount of courses you can do. And then you eventually, if you want to complete the program anyway, you have to apply via the SGSPA portal anyway and pay the application fee. So there are specific reasons to apply as an interest student. If you're a professional wanting to do this for some professional upgrading, if you're just testing the waters with this, if you only want to do one or two of our courses and nothing beyond, if you want to audit a course, there's some possibilities there. But again, those are going to be on very limited basis. So primarily, we're going to be seeing a lot of full-time applicants, access applicants for the winter 2023, and then of course expand that out even further for fall applications as well. One of the things I always encourage is to make sure that you only apply once. No matter how you've applied, make sure you only have one application in the SGSPA system. Applying multiple times doesn't help. If you've made errors, there are possibilities of correction in a very limited capacity, but it's why we encourage everybody to take the time with the application. We know that we're offering this very close to our closure of the winter 2023 application. However, you still have time to really think about your application for the program. So review your application, take the time, make sure everything's correctly filled out. That even means the simplest things, such as like your first and last name. Make sure those are properly filled out, because you want to make sure that everything is as accurate as possible in the system for us to do our review. If you do make a mistake and you have to make some corrections that aren't doable, you may have to reapply to the program, which is another application fee. $110 is nothing to laugh at for anybody, really. And we want to make sure that you're not wasting money inappropriately. And we don't need multiple applications in the system to really get a sense of who you are. So make sure you've applied correctly and that you have everything accurately in there. If you need any support, you can get some assistance through the SGSPA office. You can talk to them about your application, and we'll provide their contact information a little bit later in the presentation. Of course, when I talk about reviewing all of the information in the application, here are kind of all the different items that you can take a look at. Of course, there's your personal information, name, birth date, where you currently are, your address. Are you a citizen, permanent resident, no status within Canada? It's fine either way. Program details, are you applying as a full-time or part-time student? As well, are you applying as an access pathway candidate, which is a little bit later there if you just select yes or no on the application. Again, as I mentioned, those 2 personal statement of interest questions. This is your opportunity to stand out to us, and we really want to know why you've applied for the program, what's your motivation, and what are you going to do with the studies moving forward. And then your references, and references we'll get a little bit into specifically here in a bit, but then you sign off and pay, and then your application is in the system for us to await your documents to be provided. So let's talk about the documents that are required here. And the first one I want to cover are transcripts. So as I mentioned, the easiest way for us to review your transcripts is to submit them electronically, uploaded with your application in English PDF format, black and white, and you cover all of the materials. We know that there are a lot of documents when it comes to transcripts at times. You may have multiple pages of a transcript. Maybe you have a transcript page per semester of your studies, and you've done maybe 8 semesters. We will need to see each and every one of those pages, and we also need to see each and every one of the programs that you've attempted or completed at the post-secondary level. And I'll cover that. But again, the easiest way is to upload. If you don't have that capacity, if you're unable to upload your transcripts, you have to get them sent in from your post-secondary institutions directly to the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs. This is the best way to do it. So obviously the easiest way is via email. You can email sgspa.reception@queensu.ca. You can't email them directly with your transcripts, but you can then go to your post-secondary institutions and have them email transcripts on your behalf. So hopefully, because of the pandemic, your previous school has changed over to being able to provide transcripts via email. That would be fantastic. A lot of the Canadian institutions have, as well as our partners over in the US. Lots of European universities are doing the same. So just see if you can have your transcripts sent directly to the SGSPA office from your previous post-secondary institution. However, we acknowledge that we know that that's not possible for everybody. You may have an institution in your past that just doesn't send electronic forms, and you have to have them physically sent in to the program. Now, eventually, all of our students who gain access to the program, who gain an offer of admission, they all have to submit official transcripts. But if you have to do this for the admission process, that's the mailing address in which you have your previous post-secondary institutions mail in your transcripts directly to the SGSPA office. Once they are received, they are then added to your application. And when you log into your application in their SGSPA system, you'll see a column that says SGSPA received, and it'll say no, or it'll say yes. No means they have not yet received it. And you'll have to work with SGSPA to see where where your transcripts are, or if there was any issue with your transcripts. If it's selected as yes, which means it's acknowledged. If there's any other item on your application that says no, make sure you get that resolved as quickly as possible. But we acknowledge that it may take time to get transcripts to us from your home institution. So for those of you who are not yet applying, again, you have until September 15th to have your institution mail those transcripts in as necessary. And like I mentioned, we need to see all of your post-secondary studies, master's level, undergraduate level, of course, because that is our primary basis of admission, but master's level, PhD level. We also need to see any college studies that you've done that aren't related to professional activities. So we don't need to see CPA upgrading. We don't need to see WMIS or any sort of health and safety stuff, unless it was within a diploma program. But if you did a diploma program, we'd need to see those as well. This is an example of an acceptable transcript that we will utilize for the admissions process. So you can see the example on the left here. It has the crest of the institution. It has marked on it that it is an official transcript. It has the outline of the grades or the courses. You can see all those tiny lines separated out by semester or term. It has your grades. Maybe it has what the credit level was. Maybe it also has what your class average was. That's what we need to see in regards to an official transcript for the admissions process. Those are what you want to be uploading for your application. Now, of course, we know that it's going to vary from institution to institution, but anything that highlights what grade you received, that's what we're going to need to see. And we have methods in our office to convert all sorts of GPAs from international institutions to the Queen's GPA scale. So just keep that in mind. And of course, when it comes to the admissions process, everything that we're looking at the undergraduate level needs to be at a B average or higher. That is our admission standard. So on a Queen's scale, Queen's uses the 4.3 GPA scale. We need to see a 3 on that scale. So just be really mindful that that's how high you need to hit on your scale in order to meet the admission standards. There are great conversion websites that can convert kind of 4.0 GPAs to 4.3 or different ones over to a 4.3 scale. Do those conversions. We don't do any pre-assessments. So you can't email us your transcripts and get a pre-assessment. We would need to see them with your application, but you can do a lot of the legwork on your own to see if you meet our admission requirement. If you don't, the access pathway is a recommendation for you, and I'll detail that in a little bit. But these are the transcripts we don't accept. So we don't accept West documents in place of transcripts, and we don't just accept your degree certificate or your diploma certificate in place of transcripts. The diploma and degree certificates are great to have to confirm that you've completed it, so you can't upload those, but they will not take the place of these documents. And the one thing I forgot to mention, the item on the right, that's the backside of a lot of transcripts, just giving us the breakdown of the way that grades are marked at your home institution. Include those as well, scan front and back in black and white. But I know a lot of people have West's documents for their assessment. You can provide those in support of your application, but they won't take the place of a transcript. So if you've uploaded those with your application already, say you've already applied and you've uploaded your West documents, make sure you log back into the SGSPA website or application portal, because more likely than not, if you've only submitted West documents, your application is not going to be complete. We need to see those transcripts for the assessment process. And I've already talked about this as well. We need to see all transcripts, not only just the type, like master's, PhD, all that. Also, if you did any exchange study or letter of permission that's not highlighted on your home institution transcript. So for example, if I went to Queen's University and I did an exchange at York University, if the York University grades aren't highlighted on my Queen's transcript, I need to have both of those submitted for the assessment process. The more that you have to submit, the longer it could take. So we encourage you to get on this as soon as possible and submit whatever you can up front directly to the SGSPA office. And again, here are the ways that you can submit these documents via email, via fax, or via physical mail. I'm going to leave these up just for a quick second. I'm going to take a drink of water. It's a good time for me to pause, and you can jot those down as necessary. Okay, hopefully you have those written down. If not, visit the SGSPA website. The place where you begin your application, there's a really great information page, and compile documentation is step 2, and it gives you all the details about how to get transcripts to the SGSPA office. Let's talk about English language proficiency tests, or ELPTs for short. So there are only certain conditions where we consider exemption of the ELPT requirement. And we really are stringent with this requirement because now Queen's is the only point in which an individual interested in becoming an RCIC needs to show their English language proficiency test score. If you complete our program, the college now accepts that as meeting the language proficiency to become an immigration consultant. So we are pretty stringent with this. If there's any wiggle room, we are going to ask you to submit your scores. And again, That is why we allow for the application to close on a certain date and for the document deadline to be a little bit later. You now, from the point of the closure of the application, you have 6 weeks to get us any additional documents, and that includes your ELPT scores. But here are the exemption conditions that you can be considered under to not have to submit your scores. Number one is if you are a native English speaker. You've been speaking English as your primary language all your life. You did not have to learn English as a second language. Keep that in mind. That's really key to make sure that you can qualify as a native English speaker. The second qualification or exemption condition is that you've attended full-time studies at an accredited university within 12 months of your application, in which the education was provided in English. So keep that in mind. If you're applying now, we need to see that you were in a post-secondary program at the university level, studying only in English on a full-time basis. So that's the only way that you'll be considered for an exemption under that condition. If it's anything beyond 2021, it's more likely than not that you're not going to qualify for that exemption. So just be mindful that you're going to have to provide that ELPT score. The other condition is you wish to take the Queen's School of English for Academic Purposes, or ESLA 150 program. That's fine. There is a program available for our applicants who receive a conditional offer of admission. So that means that you have to acknowledge this on our application, that that's what you want to do. You gain an offer of admission that's conditional upon your completion of the ESLA 150 program with a minimum A grade, but this is not available for our winter term applicants as such. That's only available for fall, just because of the way that the program is offered from the Queen's School of English. We can only offer it in the fall. And then for those who do take that program, you take your first term in the ESLA 150 program. If you achieve that A grade, then you begin your program studies in the winter term the following winter. So it does take a term, it does add. There's also a considerable cost and time commitment. So you can review the Queen's School of English website for more information there. But realistically, the ELPT score is going to be the best way to acknowledge your abilities for success in our program regarding the English language component. If you meet one of our exemptions, you can highlight that on the application. You list either 1 or 2 in the question number 4. You either say that English is your native language or you meet the conditions as such. We will review, and please note that that does not mean that it's going to be accepted. There are going to be situations where the admission committee will still request for an ELPT score to be submitted. So just keep that in mind. Also, for submission of scores, you can have an ELPT score, one of our approved scores here, that's 2 years or less. So if you took something back in 2021 or 2020, it may still be eligible, so long as it's one of our approved ELPT scores. Speaking of those, let's go on to, if you don't meet the exemption requirements, you list number 3 there in the question. You just kind of copy and paste that block in, and then you submit your ELPT scores directly to the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs office. These are the tests that we approve: CALE Computer Edition, or CE for short, IELTS Academic only. We don't accept IELTS General, and the 2 different TOEFL tests, the IBT and the PBT. A lot of these are now offered online. We know that the turnaround time for these is roughly between 2 and 8 days when you book and take your test. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, and you should be able to get things into our office by September 15th. So just be mindful of that if you think you're going to have to submit it, or if you absolutely know you're going to have to submit it, begin the process now of requiring your ELPT scores. These are the scores that we do not accept. We don't accept IELTS General, as mentioned. We don't accept CELPIP or Duolingo. I believe there was one more in the chat that I saw. If it's not one of these 4, CALE, IELTS Academic, TOEFL, IBT, or PBT, we don't accept it. So just be mindful of that. One final point in regards to this is that make sure you submit things by September 15th. We can't accept things after that. It's very, very difficult to process any application without all of the documents. And we aren't providing conditional offers of admission based on your ELPT score results. Those are necessary for the admission process. So we need to see those scores to make sure that we can make a proper assessment of your application. They are not something that we're going to do a conditional offer for. The final point I want to make before we get into kind of our frequently asked questions and we open up the Q&A for everybody is references. Every application needs to have 2 references. Either it is 2 professional references or 1 academic and 1 professional reference. An academic reference is only needed for those who are 5 years or less out of their post-secondary studies. So if you did a college program, did a diploma, or you were in your undergrad, we would need to hear, or we would like to hear from an academic reference for your application. But of course, the professional reference will also be necessary for those individuals. For everybody else, you'll need to provide 2 professional references. And professional references are outlined as a manager or supervisor who has seen you in a professional workspace. No colleagues, no coworkers. It needs to be a manager or a supervisor. Academic reference is very much similar. It needs to be a professor, an instructor, somebody in kind of an authoritative position within the classroom who has worked directly with you, who can provide a really good reference on your behalf. As mentioned, these are the references that we don't accept. Nothing from family members, coworkers who have not managed or supervised you, classmates, or friends. In extreme situations, if you need accommodations made in regards to the references, please reach out to our program and we will discuss these on a case-by-case basis. If you are having any issues with the references that you've provided in your application, maybe your reference hasn't received an email from the SGSPA office, go ahead and reach out to them directly, the SGSPA office, to make sure that the email is correct. And if something needs to be resent, that they can support you. One of the things that we encourage in regards to making sure that your references are all good to go is that you talk to your references, talk to them directly, make sure they know what they're receiving and what the program is, why they should be providing you with further information. Make sure they receive the email from SGSPA. It might be in their junk or spam mail folder. Make sure they're filling out that material. Also, make sure you log into your application account and you monitor the reference submission. So if you've just submitted an application, you can log in and see when your references are received. And those are a pretty major component of why we see a lot of applications not move forward to our office for review. It's that references just didn't submit their documents. So make sure you're really monitoring this as you move forward. Those are 3 major components of the application that could potentially hold up your application from being completed. So one of the common questions we hear is, how do I know my application is complete? The number one thing I can tell you is to log into your application system and monitor if things were received. If they weren't, you need to find out why that is. Was something not sent from your home institution? Make sure you confirm that those documents were sent and to the right location. Your references, that they've received documentation. If you are required to provide an ELPT score with your application as submitted through SGSPA, make sure that's submitted as well. We can't process anything until everything is received. So make sure you are logging into your application. You are working with the SGSPA office to make sure things are received and added to your file. And I think that pretty much covers everything on this slide. One of the final points that I want to provide, and then we'll open up the Q&A here, is that you read everything you receive in regards to your application. I really can't promote this enough, that when you receive an email from our program, either from our office, the program office, because you've directly emailed us, or we've sent you a reminder email or some update, or you've received it from the SGSPA office or from the application system, read it thoroughly to know what we're asking from you. We will be sending out document reminders to our winter 2023 applicants in regards to something that may be outstanding. We're going to be generic at first, so it really gets you to go into your application system and understand what is missing. So log in first, read any email that you get from us, and know what's missing so that you can submit it accordingly. If you didn't get emails from us, if that's a problem, make sure you check your junk mail or spam mail folders. Add the SGS app email address or sgspa.reception to your safe senders list, and make sure you've received all those documents. And if you need any additional support, of course, we encourage you to reach out to the SGSPA office via email to assist you with your application. The program does not control the application system. We work with SGSPA as one of the many graduate level programs at Queen's University. So they manage the system. They can support you a whole lot more in regards to the specifics of your application than we can, though we are here to help as well. All right. We're hitting the Q&A portion. Go ahead. If you have questions, go ahead and start populating that Q&A, but I've also got some frequently asked questions that may answer some of those. Of course, I've already answered this earlier. Is our program online? It's delivered entirely online. There's no reason to come to Kingston or Ontario or Canada even. How much does the program cost? So the program is roughly $14,592. So we have a pretty good breakdown on our program website in regards to that specific fee. That fee does not include textbooks or the one-time student levy fee. Student levy fee is roughly $34. Textbooks can run, depending on the type of textbooks you want, maybe around $400, $450. And of course, there's not textbooks for every single course, so keep that in mind as well. One of the big questions that we always seem to get is our program OSAP eligible? We are not OSAP eligible. Keep that in mind. So we are not able to provide OSAP funding or be eligible for OSAP funding. What we do is we have an agreement with Royal Bank of Canada, or RBC for short, in regards to a student line of credit for our program. If you are applying for that program, you need to identify your obviously your financial situation. It is encouraged, highly encouraged, that you have a co-signer for your line of credit application. It's really good to have a co-signer, somebody in Canada who can vouch for you, who can back you up and support you in your application process. Additionally, there are two specific people that you can reach out to. And again, you can find that on our tuition and financing page. Those are local RBC branches and individuals that specifically know our program. You would set up a virtual call or an in-person call if you're in Kingston. And you can then talk to them about your application for this. You fill out the application in this call with them. And at that point, you'll find out a few days later if there's any additional things that you need or if you've been approved. Again, it's really important to have that co-signer. So prepare somebody who is in Canada who can support you in your application for the RBC line of credit. One of the other things that we get a lot is our program postgraduate work permit eligible. We are not. So keep that in mind. If you don't need a study permit or a work permit for our program, but we also aren't eligible for anything for any permits that you're applying for during or post our program. Again, as mentioned here, the different ELPTs that we accept: IELTS Academic, KLCE, TOEFL, PBT, and IBT. And the ones that we don't accept: IELTS General, CELPIP, Duolingo, any of the other ones outside of that. I took my IELTS test in 2017. Is that accepted? It is not. So it has to be 2 years or less to be accepted for our program. So at this point, you're basically looking at August 1st, 2020 and younger. So just keep that in mind. Deadline for documents, again, as mentioned, I can't stress this enough. If you want to apply for the program, great, apply. You still have until September 15th to submit your documents. So if you are waiting to take an ELPT, you still have some time to submit. One of the things I want to talk about just very briefly is the access pathway. So this is a pathway for individuals who don't quite meet our admission standards. Now, that does not include ELPT scores. Those you need to meet the admission standards. This is more for the bachelor's degree. Maybe you didn't have a B average, or maybe you didn't complete your bachelor's. Maybe you took the paralegal program at a college level here in Ontario. This is the pathway for you. And again, it doesn't hurt any applications to apply as an access pathway. If you think that you are borderline in regards to your grade point average from your undergraduate program, the access pathway is for you. I really do encourage you to take a look at this. And there is an additional requirement. Access pathway candidates need to submit their professional resume and highlight at least 5 years worth of professional experience, ideally that's relevant to the field of immigration and citizenship. Of course, we'll accept resumes from anyone. You can utilize Access based on whatever your career is. And ideally, you've highlighted that in your personal statement of interest questions on the application. But there is this additional option to submit your resume and have it reviewed by our admission committee for consideration if you don't quite meet those admission standards. But again, it's only based on the GPA and if you completed your bachelor's. We're not utilizing this in regards to the ELPT requirements. One of the final things that I want to talk about here in regards to our frequently asked questions is a lot of people want to hear from current students in the program or even graduates. We have some great testimonials on the website. We are also working on trying to acquire additional testimonials to put out into our marketing materials for the program. So keep an eye on our website for those. We're always looking to provide as much actual in-classroom experiences as possible throughout our website. This is the point where we will begin going through the Q&A here, but I'm just going to leave this page up. So if you want to see a recording of this at a later point, it's our Facebook page, facebook.com/Queen's Law GDIP ICL. I encourage everybody to like the page and follow us there. We do great updates for prospective students and our current applicants there. So really keep that page liked there, and you'll be able to see all the information that you really need for the admission process. Of course, you can also stay connected with us via our program website, immigrationdiploma.queenslaw.ca, or you can email the program with any questions at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. So let's go ahead and do some additional questions. I'm going to leave this page up as I answer questions. If you need to cut out here at this point, thank you very much for participating. Again, we're not going to be doing any microphone questions, so you don't need to raise your hand. You don't need to wait or unmute or take your camera off. That's not going to be possible for this. We're just going to take a look at the Q&A. And if you haven't asked any questions, but you see that there's a question in there that you want to get answered, go ahead and give that an upvote. I see one question real quickly here that I want to address. Access category is for winter. Yes, we have our access pathway options for both fall and winter. So anybody can provide it there. It is that opportunity that if you don't quite meet the admission requirement for the GPA or the undergraduate degree, you can utilize that. The top voted question here is in regards to how many students we take for our winter intake. We don't give out the number specifically, but I will say it's significantly smaller than what we do for fall. So it is, I mean, both of our intakes are extremely competitive. I mean, we've just come out of our fall 2022 application cycle, and it was a very competitive year. And of course, we wish that we could offer as many spaces as we could, but this being a very limited program, I mean, we are extremely tight on how many spots we offer. So it's a small cohort for winter. It's a bigger cohort for fall, but that's just where we're at there with those with that question. So while we appreciate the question, we just can't provide any additional information. I'm going to see if there's anything else. If my application wasn't accepted, can I apply for the next semester with all the same documents and references? Of course, you're always welcome to reapply for our program. If you applied for a previous term and you didn't quite make it, we're sorry, but that's just the circumstance of a very highly competitive program like ours. You are welcome to work with the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs to move documents to your new application. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need to submit any additional documentation. Perhaps there was something missing from your previous application, or maybe you didn't submit your ELPT score in time. There's lots of reasons why an application may not have been approved moving forward. So make sure that you review your application in the system to see if there was anything outstanding. And yes, you will need to reapply, and you can work with SGSPA to see if things can be transferred. Also, if you sent in official documents, if you sent in official transcripts with your previous application, those can be migrated over and uploaded to your new application. We don't need you to contact your school in say Mexico or India or wherever to have to acquire those again. You can have them just submitted if they've already been received by the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs office. Let's see what else we have for questions. For the fall 2023, so we're already thinking ahead. Good on you. If I will finish all of my applications in October, when do we expect to receive a decision? So yes, that's a very good point. So it's a longer turnaround for those who apply in October. You have to wait until the application closes and then we make our admission decisions. So it's going to be a bit of a wait. So just keep that in mind. You don't necessarily have to just jump right out and apply first thing on October 1st. If you want to take some time with your application, you do have that opportunity. And the real key thing is just to make sure you have all of your documents submitted for your application. That's really key. It's easiest to do with the upload. If you're able to upload your documents right away with your application, it's the easiest way to get things to us. I see somebody was asking about opening their own company once they are an immigration consultant. I believe that's one of the things that the college really promotes is this entrepreneurial ideal when it comes to opening up your own immigration consultancy business. So that is possible. I do encourage you to take a look at our website and the college's website for more information. And I know that there's some coursework that does deal with the business side of being an RCIC. All right, let's see if there's any additional questions. I know there's lots, and my team is answering furiously to all of your questions. So thank you very much for submitting them, and just continue to be patient. We're probably not going to get to everybody's responses. Hopefully, a lot of the answers were already provided in this presentation. But ideally, if you want to provide any additional questions, you can always email the program office, or you can rewatch this. This will be available on our Facebook page. For individuals who are at a college level, who've completed a college program, I see that there's questions in regards to access. So yes, those who just completed a college program who have no undergraduate degree, you will need to apply via the access pathway. And those programs do not meet the exemption requirements for an English language proficiency test score or ELPT. So make sure that you are submitting your ELPT scores if you've come from a college program. Even if it's recent, it has to be at the university level. Again, the email address, if you need to reach out to our program team, is immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. So we're more than happy. That's our general inbox. We are, of course, very, very busy. I mean, you can just see from the number of questions we receive in these webinars from roughly 225 participants. We get a lot of emails. So it is going to take us some time to get back to you. So if you're really concerned about your August application, if you don't think that there's going to be things that you can get in time by that document, think about a fall application or something in the future. But we're here to answer your questions if necessary outside of this session. So it's immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. West documents are not required for our program, but they're also not accepted in place of transcripts. So you don't need to get West certification on any of your transcripts for our program. I'm going to see if there's any additional upvoted questions. For the fall, if I finish my, oh yes, I've already answered that one. My apologies. What's the difference of application requirements and spots for full-time and part-time? So there's no real difference when it comes to our application. The only thing is just an additional checkbox that you say it's either full-time or part-time. The only real difference is actually in the program. I mean, full-time students complete 3 courses per term for 3 consecutive terms. Part-time students will take 2 courses in the first term of ICL 810 and 820, and then their progression is stretched out across 5 additional terms after that. So it's in total 6 terms or 2 years. So that's the only real difference of the program. It's just a longer study plan. So just keep that in mind. But there's no difference when it comes to the admission requirements. We need to see the same documents for everybody, no matter if you're full-time, part-time, or access. Access obviously have the additional requirement of the resume, but we still need to see transcripts and all of your application questions and your ELPT if required. Yeah, I think I've answered the question in regard to access. Access is essentially the same application for everybody. It's the same requirements. It's just access are for those who don't feel that they have the B average at the post-secondary level. So really take your time and think about this. I mean, I want you to think about your time in your undergraduate and really consider how you felt you did grade wise. I mean, if you excelled, if you got straight A's and everything, access might not be the pathway for you. If you didn't, but you still did okay, I mean, you're really going to want to consider converting your GPA over to a 4.3 scale, or just thinking about how well you did in general. Access is not going to hurt your application, and it's just that additional requirement of us taking a look at your professional experience and seeing if there's any relevancy. If you've been in the field of immigration or citizenship in some way, shape, or form, and you want to promote that, we want to see your resume. I mean, the access pathway will really help. And if it does help out because your GPA at your undergraduate wasn't as great, I mean, that's going to be the way to apply for our program. So consider your access options. Access pathway is a really great pathway, but of course, that doesn't mean that you can't provide documentation. And of course, as mentioned, access does not change the requirement for ELPT scores. I just saw somebody ask about applications and why they may not go through. I would say the number one thing is a lack of items provided with the application. The big one being references. We have seen countless applications not be completed because references haven't filled out documentation on the applicant's behalf. It's why in the slide that I provide, really, I do encourage you to work with your reference directly. It's the same thing in the business world. If you are going for a job and somebody's going to reach out to a reference, it's encouraged that you speak to the reference and tell them about the job, tell them about the qualities that you want them to highlight within the form. Like, it's really important to have an open dialogue with your references. They're an important component of the application process, and they need to first receive the documentation. So in being in communication with them, you find out if they've received the email. Also, you can really encourage them to get things done in a prompt manner. Like, we need to see their documents in by September 15th. They also have the option of uploading letters of reference with their references. So you don't have to submit those on your behalf. They submit them for you. That's the biggest thing that tends not to get completed and may hold up your application. The other thing is making sure you have all of your documentation. The key thing that I tell everybody in all of these sessions is to make sure you log into the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs application system. Once you complete your application, you can go back into it and you can see what the status is of your application. You can use your email and password that you've used for submission, and you can monitor when things are complete. I really do encourage every single person, if you have an application in the system, log in now. Well, not right now, you're speaking to me. Log in after this session and just take a look at what the situation is with your application. Even if you just need reassurance that everything's been provided, maybe you've already logged in, I encourage you to log in again. Really do hope that you go into the system and see what's outstanding. And if there was something that you submitted and you have a question about, SGSPA is there to assist you with some clarity as to what's needed, what's the problem. Maybe you failed to provide a single page of an 8-page document, and it's really important. We need to see stuff like that, and it will be caught by a number of staff members on campus, and things won't be migrated to your application if it's not complete. And we won't receive it at the program level unless it's fully complete. So really make sure you're logging into the system, you're aware of what is outstanding. You look at that column that says SGSPA received and make sure everything's a yes. If there's additional requirements, of course, that'll be on the program side, and we'll reach out to you possibly with a request for an ELPT score or your resume. If you apply as access, make sure you submit your resume right away via email to our program. Let's see. I see a question in regards to not applying to graduate. So if you haven't officially completed your program, yeah, you're going to have to consider the access pathway, because the primary way of us assessing our applicants is through the completed undergraduate degree with a B average. So if you did not complete your undergraduate degree, doesn't prevent you from applying to the program. You'll just have to apply via Access. We'll need to monitor what you did at that program, and also make sure you're including all additional post-secondary institutions that you've attended. So if you attended, say, Trent University for your first 2 years, and then you transferred to Western, and then you also transferred to Waterloo, we need to see all 3 of those transcripts, because we'll see transfer credit migrate across with you. If anybody's transcript here today has transfer credit listed anywhere, we need to see where those transfer credits came from. Additional, as I mentioned, a letter of permission. If you did some additional studies just for a term, if you did a study abroad, we need to see those as well. We need a fulsome picture of your entire post-secondary career. Let's see. I'll ask my team if there's any questions coming up consistently that they want me to address. Work experience does not account for English language proficiency. So we have the 2 requirements there. We may still request all of the information, all of your scores to be provided. Based on, let's see, an additional. For anybody who is interested in part-time studies, yes, fall is definitely a primary option there. As I mentioned, winter is just, it's extremely difficult for us to really consider any part-time applicants. If you're in the system already, we appreciate that. We'll review your application still, but there's really better opportunities for fall in regards to anybody who wants to be part-time. Now, we know at this point it's going to be a longer wait for you to start your studies, but it just does provide you with a greater opportunity to complete your application fully and to really get us all the information and documentation that we need. Fall decision, I've already mentioned that will come much later. An excellent question. Thank you, whoever from my team sent this. People are asking in regards to what type of qualifications, whether it's fine if they got a Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Applied Technology or whatever you've received. It doesn't matter the credential that you have. The primary focus is that you did complete a credential. It is a graduate level program, so completing that undergraduate degree is going to be really key. So make sure that you've just identified the credential and you've submitted the transcript. It doesn't matter. Even if you've switched programs, and like I mentioned, you've moved around from different place to different place. It doesn't matter what the program is. Relevancy will only come into play when it comes to understanding professional experience for Access individuals. And even in that regard, if you're able to provide rationales to why this program really speaks to you in your personal statement questions, everything supports your application for our admission committee review. Let's see if there's anything else here. I'm going to close up the session here in a few minutes. I think we've definitely started to lose people. Thank you very much to everyone who attended. Again, you'll be able to see a recording of this on our Facebook page as mentioned here. But I'm just going to see if there's any additional questions. We don't make rolling offers of admission. I know there's a lot of institutions that do stuff like that. We typically wait for an admission cycle for us. We provide it in a certain time frame. So for those who are thinking about a fall application, you'll be looking at hearing back from us in either June or July. Winter, you're looking at October or November. Professional experiences, does it matter what field? So long as the individual was a supervisor or manager of you, that's really key. So keep that in mind. We need to see management level who's able to really provide an understanding about you. Payment options for any of our students. There's a lot of great information on our website. There are, of course, the RBC line of credit. Basically, you pay per course per term. So for full-time students, you pay for 3 courses. There is a payment plan through the registrar's office in which you do 4 payments across the entire term to kind of break it down. But we primarily get into that information once we offer people an offer of admission and you go from an applicant to a student. But there's great research that you can still do online. I'm going to see if there's one additional question I can do before we close up. Now, we appreciate there was a lot of questions here today. We're not able to get to everybody. Hopefully what I provided really does provide you with a little bit of information and clarifies the entire process for you. Let's see. For anybody who is unable to acquire references in accordance with the application requirements, reach out to the program office for additional assistance at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. So thank you very much for that. It doesn't matter where your working experience was from, whether in Canada or international. We just need to see a detailed resume with your application. For part-time students, yeah, the minimum timeline to complete the program is 6 terms or 2 years. Full-time people can take it in a year. There is a program progression for a 3-year part-time study plan, but it's obviously very lengthy, and it's only available through discussion with our program staff. So anybody who applies for part-time studies is expected that they're on the 2-year study plan. Institution recognition. So this will be the final question for today. Now, we know that we talk a lot about accredited institutions. There's some great resources out there that we utilize behind the scenes to understand if a institution is recognized. Many of the international institutions are. There's definitely a small select few that are more private business colleges or professional colleges. We definitely have some processes in place to make sure that we acknowledge what is accepted. If you are ever wondering, you're welcome to apply via the access pathway. Maybe there's a way that we can take that into consideration. But again, we need to make sure that you've received your degree from a degree issuing institution and somewhere that that is basically an acceptable post-secondary institution, primarily university, for our admission process. I think with that, I'm going to end it there. I really appreciate everybody's attendance here. I hope everybody is still continuing to be safe and healthy and happy wherever you're located. This video will be made available on our Facebook page. So again, it's the screen up, facebook.com/Queen's Law GDIP ICL. If you know anybody else who's applying for this program, who wants to have this information, who wasn't able to attend today, definitely drive them towards the Facebook page. Like our Facebook page and follow us there. We put up a lot of great information for our current applicants and prospective applicants. We do a lot of great information. And then, of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to our newsletter mailing list via MailChimp. You can sign up for that via our program website. But thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. If you need to reach out to the program, immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. If you are an applicant in the system and you log in and see there's some outstanding items, make sure you reach out to the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs at sgspa.reception@queensu.ca. Thank you very much for attending, everybody. Take care, and yes, have a good rest of your day.